Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chasing a Murder. We're going to go over some of the latest information on the Lori Vallow Daybell case and her upcoming trial. Now, remember, Lori Vallow Daybell is known as the Doomsday Mom, the Zombie Mom, and attached to the Zombie Cult. Lori Vallow Daybell has been found guilty of murdering her own children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and conspiring to murder Tammy Daybell. She also recently was found guilty for conspiring to murder her estranged husband, Charles Vallow. The initial investigation with Arizona police into Charles Vallow's shooting was treated as an incident of self-defense, a classification challenged by his sister, Kay Woodcock, who was urging the investigators that this was a potential murder or foul play case. The slow response of the Arizona investigators, even after the attack of Brandon Boudreaux, provided what critics describe as an endless opportunities for a group labeled the Zombie Cult. It would actually escalate their campaign of terror and murder. After Charles' death, Brandon Boudreaux, which was Lori Vallow's nephew-in-law, married to Melanie Boudreaux at the time, was shot at in October. This is the last and final trial for Lori Vallow Daybell. You got to remember, when this was first going, Kay Woodcock and Brandon Boudreaux were struggling to get effective assistance from investigators. It wasn't until Kay Woodcock was able to get in touch with the Rexburg investigators that they were able to get the ball rolling. In fact, by the time they started looking into this, weeks have passed since JJ's murder. Lori had ample time, months in fact, to orchestrate her schemes before the law enforcement even began to close in. This wasn't an isolated incident either. They had a conveyor belt to the grave. They were responsible for 4 murders in mere 4 months. Many people who follow this case believe that the body count would have soared if Rexburg hadn't acted as quick as they did. You can look at this picture that I have on the screen right now. This is Chad Daybell's property. Lori Vallow's lover at the time, she was cheating with a married man. And somehow she convinced Chad to bury her unalived children on his property. And so you can see in the satellite image here, they were able to purchase through Apollo mapping. There appears to be a hole that was freshly dug. This is the day that Tylee Ryan disappeared, September 9th of 2019. Now, when Lori's first case, she was represented by attorneys. But for her husband at the time, Charles Vallow, and for Brandon Boudreaux's case, she has decided to represent herself. Here's the thing, with Lori Vallow's decision to represent herself in court, it actually raised concerns that she may use this as an opportunity to further distress an already victimized family or families involved with these cases. However, the courts seem to be handling this case with extreme caution, as evidenced by the handling of both Charles Vallow's trial and now Brandon Boudreaux's case. Many of you know that lately Lori Vallow has not been very happy with Judge Boreski. She is trying to get him thrown off the case. In fact, in one court hearing, she directly confronted Judge Boreski, telling him that he was biased. But Judge Boreski stated he does not have any type of personal bias against her, that her being upset about the motions that he's denied is because they had no merit. So Lori Vallow's motion for recusal have been denied by a different judge who found her, disagreement with Judge Boreski, or his ruling rather, did not demonstrate bias or the inability for him to be fair and impartial in trial. All right, guys, so the jury selection is the continued, supposedly today, June 2nd, 2025, involving the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. But on Friday, May 30th of 2025, Lori Vallow Daybell left the court proceedings early, stating that she felt sick. After that, Judge Justin Boreski instructed Lori to inform her counsel if she needed to be quarantined in jail over the weekend and couldn't make it to court on Monday. And today, it's Monday, and we're still unsure whether or not her illness will impact today's proceedings, maybe stall proceedings. We don't know. So a lot of people are wondering, since they were talking about quarantine, is this COVID going around? Many people who follow this case also believe that there's a chance that Lori is just faking in order to cause some kind of problem or to gain something. We know that with Lori actually repeatedly filing motions to have Judge Justin Boreski recuse himself from this Arizona case, alleging personal bias or prejudice, it didn't happen. She's probably, could be, at least we suspect, throwing just a major fit. Maybe she's just going to make it difficult on the judge to maintain a scheduled trial. Now, you got to remember that this trial is Lori Vallow's last trial. They expect this trial to go quick. And if you think about it, this is Lori's last opportunity, most likely. I mean, we don't know where she's going to go to prison, but we suspect Idaho. If this is her last bit of time here in Arizona to be close to where her family is, to have a little bit more lenience since she's in a jail and not prison. And it seems she has actually maybe built some relationships within that jail with other ladies there facing murder charges as well. It's just, if you know Lori likes to make people's lives difficult. She's a destroyer. And if she's not going to get her way, then she's going to make it difficult. That's simple. And so if you think about it, you got Brandon Boudreaux and all these people coming in from out of town, even reporters, to cover this trial or to attend the trial. Lori may be getting some kind of satisfaction knowing that she's causing them a bit of chaos. And I hate to mention it, but it's important that we never forget just how cold she can be, that during her trial in Idaho, evidence was presented regarding the discretion and disposal of her children's remains, rather than direct evidence of torture in the typical sense. Was there prolonged physical torment before death? We do know that Tylee Ryan had experienced a lot of mental abuse. When Tylee's remains were located, they were dismembered, burned pieces of bone. They were charred. And I don't want to say too much more other than the evidence showed that there was stabbing or chopping marks on the remaining remains. They even suspected that some of these marks might have been created through ice picks, cleavers, and hatchets. Let's not forget J.J. Vallow, bound with duct tape, his face covered in a plastic bag. His arms and feet were bound in duct tape. Let's not forget the testimony of Aubrey after she confronted Lori Vallow just after Tammy Daybell had died, or was murdered, rather. Aubrey had questions for Lori, and according to Aubrey, Lori threatened to murder her, chop her to pieces, and put her in a plastic bag. Charles Vallow said that Lori Vallow threatened to murder him before she actually carried out the threats. Joe Ryan tried to warn the court that she was a crazy Mormon. She had actually stalked him multiple times during one of those stalking, well, it's actually a meeting to exchange titling. Now you got to figure, remember, good mom that she is, they planned an attack with Joe Ryan in front of Tylee. This good mom also planned an attack with Charles Vallow in front of both Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. And once you go back and you look at everything that she's been accused of and what people say about Lori Vallow, this is probably a very dark individual. A dark individual with a very long history of attacking, threatening, and inciting violence on other people. What do they all have in common? Well, all of them are people that she got tired of being in her life, that had no use to her any longer and didn't want them there. That is the common denominator for the victims of Lori Vallow. So it all relies on Lori's behavior in court, on how quick this trial is going to go. The original timeline was they had planned to have the jury picked and able to do their opening or arguments this afternoon. How fast will this trial go now that we're seeing a few complications will also depend on, how fast they are able to do the jury selection, the number of witnesses that they call, and how efficiently both sides present their case. We know that Lori Vallow in the last case really didn't even have any witnesses to present. Most of her witnesses were precluded. Now, we do know that there's a few witnesses that we thought we should see, but didn't. People like Melanie Gibb, Melanie Boudreaux Pawlowski, Nate Eaton from East Idaho News actually did get a witness list, and, well, it doesn't seem like there's that many familiar names except for the investigators. I haven't had time to go over these witnesses right now, but we can see that there are several civilian witnesses, including Brandon Boudreaux himself. Again, you have to wonder if some of these witnesses are his neighbors that actually witnessed the Jeep in his driveway. So that's going to be interesting to hear. That we're going to hear testimony we've never heard before. So here's a few familiar names you are knowledgeable about, which is Ryan Pillar, Nathan Duncan. They even have testimony from Rexburg Police, Ray Hermosillo. I'm guessing that Ray is going to have some information that he can share when they actually located the Jeep in Idaho. But I'm wondering, we're not hearing many names like Chad Daybell. We're not hearing very much on Melanie Boudreaux, Melanie Gibb, or Zulema. But we know that Alex Cox, he's going to have to be one of the main names mentioned in trial. We do know that we're probably going to see some text messages, probably between Alex and Lori. But what about, the storage? Remember, she rented a storage compartment where security footage actually captured Lori and her brother and Lori and her lover at the time, Chad Daybell, loading and unloading things that seemed to belong to the Jeep, like tires and back seats. Remember, they're having to take caution with this court because they're trying to prevent from opening doors to past trials or past horrific events that is tied to Lori and her zombie cult. So they're really going out of their way to kind of prevent that from happening. That's probably why you're not seeing witnesses like Zulema and Melanie Gibb on the stand. And all we can do is, buckle our seatbelts, guys, and go for the ride that Lori's going to take us on. Is she going to continue to make, court proceedings difficult for Judge Boreski? You got to remember, the prosecutor's been very careful to not be too aggressive or cause, more unnecessary issues with Lori, knowing that, how aggressive she can be and how butthurt she can get. Trina K has remained professional during the trial. It's going to be interesting to see her opening arguments. What does she have to say about, Brandon Boudreaux's case? What's going to be her idea of the motive? Trina's K and idea of what Lori's intentions were for this case. Yeah, we have all of that to look forward to. Again, remember, Lori Vallow, it must be sinking in. This is the last trial. This is her last spotlight. And once this is over, she will be thrown behind bars and the key thrown away. Lori knows that this trial is not supposed to last that long. In my opinion, I think she's stalling for time in order to try to take other opportunities to take down Judge Boreski. We really won't know until we start seeing, trial begin its coverage again. So we're looking forward to knowing exactly what's going on and looking forward to Brandon Boudreaux getting the justice and this case being closed, done with, and her thrown behind bars in prison and no more, spotlight for Lori Vallow Daybell. I've wondered, what is Chad Daybell doing? Is he curious about what's going on with these trials? Are they in contact with one another some way? One thing, Lori and Chad both, they like to use people to get what they want. So you can believe that they have befriended someone in order to communicate between the two of them for them. I think we're still wondering, are they still planning on writing that biography? Are they still preparing for the second coming of Jesus Christ? The missions continue while behind bars. Is Chad busy writing books while he awaits his death sentence? I guess in time we will find out more information, but it's going to become more difficult. I'm going to share a few comments that you guys have shared. Now, many people are still questioning, why is it that Melanie Boudreaux Kowalski is not behind bars? And Pam Keith she said, Melanie knew so much. It's sad that she's not been held accountable. Valerie Peterson says, Melanie's just like Lori. Christine Mara says, why is it that Melanie hasn't been charged? And there are many, many more comments where you guys believe that Melanie Boudreaux Kowalski should be charged. And you say that she's a lot like her Aunt Lori, almost a spitting image. B24 says another important thing is when Melanie was trespassing, she was asking police repeatedly to get Brandon come outside. If you've been following this case, you know what video clip she's talking about, and that's where Melanie brings these false documents. They're not false, but they didn't stand for what she told the police they stood for. And she's trying to get Brandon Boudreaux to come outside. And guess who is in the vehicle she rode in with her? Alex Cox. Alex Cox had just taken shots at Brandon a month before. So what was the reasoning for Alex Cox being there? And man, it took, galls to be there after knowing police are looking for the shooter for the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. Several of you say lock her up and that she is part of the attack and attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. Others, like Lori Conan, says, I wonder what's going on with the police department / detectives in Arizona. Why wasn't Alex even brought in for questioning for the shooting? And Lori, so many of us have that same outlook. What was going on in Arizona? Why were they moving so slowly? Many people are not happy with, the investigators that were covering both Charles Vallow and Brandon Boudreaux's case. And actually, at the beginning, according to the private investigator Brandon Boudreaux hired, he says Brandon was not either. And even the investigator noticed that Arizona police and investigators were dragging their feet. Many people believe if they had gotten on these cases as quick as they could have, that maybe we could have prevented so many deaths. RH Many Faces says, I believe that Melanie was cut a heck of a deal because of her new husband and her giving evidence on Lori. The thing is what kind of deal did they get? Have you guys seen much of a deal? I haven't. Are they hiding some things? Are there things back there that we don't know about? I want to say thank you to all of you that have commented and shared. Those like the weird mom who always support me and say excellent as always, Donna Walker, and of course Rhonda and Zero and many, many more. I'm going to try to start bringing in more of your comments. Guys, I love you to death. I want to thank you for everything. I will see you guys soon.